Hi everyone, so very warm welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today for a conversation that I've been looking forward to since Alan very kindly agreed to join me. I'm particularly looking forward to it because having read his book as part of the preparation here, Chasing the Internet, it's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating character. Alan has a very interesting life, and I'm hoping as we go through the next hour, we're going to be able to draw out insights from that, from his stories, which have not only created him, but has also led to the success that he's having now, the mission that he's on, and the work that he's doing. Whether we can learn from that, I don't know. Is it related to circumstance and his background? Does it apply to all of us? That's a question that I think we'll have to think about as we go through the journey. It's certainly his life, his experiences has definitely made the person he is and the success that he's having. Before we get started, though, very warm welcome and thanks to Ross Davey and his team at Silicon Overdrive on the call. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this series. He's a good friend of mine now. He runs that team beautifully. And if you're looking at AWS, if you're migrating, if you're looking at using their services, even if you're currently using them, I really do recommend giving him and his team a shout. There's incredible discounts, rebates, and benefits that they're able to bring, which oftentimes you wouldn't have been aware of. So I absolutely recommended that. Anyway, let's now get started. Let's get started on what I want to talk about. Alan, first up, a very warm welcome.
Thanks for having me.
One of the things that stood out to frame things here is a passage in your book where you ask yourself if you have courage, and you answer it with, it's a tough question because I've been afraid my whole life, afraid of my dad, afraid of being kicked out of varsity, afraid of being fired, afraid of what people think, afraid of losing money, afraid of being single. This is not the sort of sentence or passage I typically expect from top entrepreneurs to admit, even if that's what they feel in private. Why did you write that, and how has this, do you think, shaped, the person that you are now?
Well, I wrote it probably because I was, 3 o'clock in the morning having a coffee and writing this damn book. And I was just telling the truth. I was literally, it's almost like a self-reflection exercise. If anything, that's what the book was. It was about self-reflection. And I guess in retrospect, it was true. I was afraid, and I still am afraid of lots of things. But I realized afterwards that being afraid was okay, because I've obviously got a bit of courage because I can overcome my fears. But it's a bit of a muscle. The more you kind of work through your fears, the better you are at overcoming your fears.
Do you think it's been crucial to understand that kind of fear, and is that a motivator for you in some ways? Is actually helping you, or is it hindering you and you could have done more if you hadn't felt that way?
You've got to, I think fear is important. I mean, I think if I hadn't been afraid of disappointing my dad, then I probably wouldn't have got through varsity. And if I hadn't been afraid of, not looking after my kids, then I probably wouldn't have recovered from MXit. So, lots of fear is not a bad motivator. I mean, you mustn't let it control you, but I don't think fear is a very bad motivator. But I mean, one example of fear, I've always had a bit of a fear of public speaking. And I've done 4 TEDx talks. And the first 2 talks were so bad. The second one my wife watched. Afterwards, she said to me, that's the worst speech she's ever seen anyone give, ever. Not just me, like anyone ever. And I actually agreed with her because I just felt myself completely making a mess of it. But then I got another invitation and another talk, and my talks have got a little bit better. And kind of what you realize is the more you do this stuff, the more you realize the consequences are not the end, even if you mess things up completely. And that kind of helps you overcome the fear and takes the shake out of your voice. Yeah.
Why do you do it though? Why, when someone asks you to come and do a TED talk or a presentation, do you go through that mental trauma of saying, okay, I'll do it, even though you're so scared of doing it?
Yeah.
You're going to look like a complete buffoon the first couple of times. Great, now you can do it in your sleep. I mean, you're phenomenal. Everyone's potentially seen you. I've certainly seen you on stage. It's always amazing. Why on earth do you go through that opening set to go and get to that point? I mean, to be honest, you don't need to.
You should say yes to everything. You should say yes to everything except for heroin. You should say yes to every opportunity that presents itself to you, as long as it fits within your values. I know what my values are. I say my prayers every day. I remind myself what the path is, and I stay in the light. And as long as whatever's been presented to me doesn't contravene my values, I'm in. You get one life. You only live once. You should not say no to any opportunity to learn something new or have an adventure. So I say yes to everything, no matter how uncomfortable it feels.
All right, let's put all this in context because for most people on the call, they perhaps don't know the details of Fibre Time. I don't know the details of Fibre Time, and this is something I'm super excited to go and learn about. Can you just give us the high level elevator pitch about what it's all about?
2010, I woke up one day, I thought to myself, I want to make money. I like spending money. I don't really need fancy clothes and stuff, but I don't want to like not be able to buy shit when I want to buy it. And there's nothing wrong with making money and making a business that makes money, but I didn't want to just do that with my life. I wanted to make a difference. I just had my first child. She was 2 years old. She was on the internet all the time. And I thought, this kid of mine, she's already got all these advantages in life. And she's pulling away on top of all those advantages, pulling away with uncapped internet. Kids down the road on the township, they don't have internet on top of all the disadvantages they have, and it just feels unfair. So I said, okay, 2010, from here on in, I'm going to try to get people on the internet and make money at the same time. No shame in making money, but the purpose is going to be something good, which is effectively trying to deal with inequality in South Africa. And I've had a few adventures along the way, and my latest adventure is now Fibre Time, started 2022. And after, a long career of taking shortcuts, I mean, I'm a SOTI, for those Afrikaans, listeners, you know what SOTIs are. We are SOTIs, we take the easy path, we don't take the hard path. We don't look for the guy to run into on the rugby field. We try to run into the gap. But sometimes you actually need to take the hard path. And I've learned that the hard way in telecoms. You can't do it wirelessly. You can't do it with an app. You actually have to do physical infrastructure in people's homes if you're going to bridge the digital divide, which means putting fiber into every shack in every home in every township in South Africa, which is not something that I thought I'd ever do.
So just pause there to that last point. Why can't you use Wi-Fi?
It gets congested. So wireless internet will always be congested, more congested than fiber. It's as simple as that. You go to any community anywhere in the world that's densely populated, anywhere in the world that has money, they're not using wireless. They're not using 5G. They're not using, beaming satellite from Starlink. It gets too congested. The speeds slow down. You're always going to have a worse experience, a less reliable and slow experience with wireless in a densely populated community. Most people in South Africa live in densely populated communities. They're called townships. And the only way you're going to give them a world-class affordable internet is literally the only way you're going to do this fiber. I tried everything else. It doesn't work. The wireless options don't work. You've got to get on the ground. You've got to put poles in the ground. You've got to put fiber into every home. And so we started Fibre Time. We said, okay, let's get away from this lazy, SOTI stuff. Let's do the hard stuff. And the hard stuff is fiber in every home. We kind of changed the traditional fiber model. We don't just pass the homes. We connect every single home. We do it a bit more affordably than leafy suburbs. Leafy suburbs use trenched fiber. It's about 5 times more expensive than aerial fiber. So we put poles in the ground, put fiber in the poles. We drop fiber from the pole into every single home. Some poles have got 32 homes connected to it. In the home, we've got a UPS and we've got a router on the wall. And everybody, for free, every single home, 100% saturation. And all you got to do is go to a spaza shop or an Capitec or some app and buy a R5 voucher, get 24 hours uncapped, 100 megs per second internet. That is the dream. And it's not just hard building infrastructure, but it's pretty hard, like raising money to be able to build that kind of infrastructure and then praying somebody's going to buy your vouchers. So it's been about 4 years now. First 2 years, we got to about 10,000 homes. We almost went out of business a couple of times. I spent a lot of my time effectively lying so that people didn't panic. And in the last 2 years, things have gone a little bit better. We're now at about 415,000 connected homes, 50 townships around the country.
So there's a hell of a lot to unpack there. Let's just go back in time and try to go and put it in an order where it makes a little bit more sense, for me. So the first part is you've told yourself that you want to go and provide internet, cheap internet, maybe one day even free internet to probably the segments of society that need it most to give them a level playing field, to allow them to level up. So I understand the purposes. It's absolutely beautiful. What took you from just thinking and imagining and dreaming about this purpose to say, I'm going to go and do this? Because there's so many barriers. The biggest one just being no one else was doing this. And when you look at it, you go, well, why is no one else doing this? Well, there must be a bloody good reason. Therefore, maybe I'll just keep my dream and I just keep it to myself and I move to, and do something that's more sensible instead. But you didn't. You pursued this. Why? How? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I've got to start by pointing something out. I'm a white guy. I was born in 1977 in the middle of apartheid. My dad started Vodacom, and I've got the same name as him. So I've got quite a few advantages over a lot of people in the world. And I just want to say that like I don't run away from that. I got extremely lucky. I got a legend for a dad and a lovely mother who loved me. And I learned a lot at his knee, and I've managed through that kind of lucky break in life to kind of get into the telecom industry. I had a little bit of a leg up. And then I've managed to make a little bit of money along the way. And all of that kind of gave me a platform from which to pursue my ideas. So, not everyone can chase their ideas because not everyone has the network or the capital, etc. And I just got extremely lucky. I don't pretend in any way that I'm cleverer than most people or anything like that. I just got extremely lucky. The question is, What do you do with your luck? A lot of people get lucky. You look like you're a nice guy, you got a nice complexion, you got blonde hair, what do you do with that nice gift of the God? And some people are fast, they got fast legs, some people, I just got, yeah, basically got a name. And what I'm doing with it is I'm trying to make a difference. And I was very lucky in the sense that I had an epiphany. Not everyone has an epiphany. I had an epiphany 2010. My epiphany was the internet will make the world less unequal. And but the only way it can make the world less unequal is if you get it into the places that need it the most, which is townships. So I've got two things. I've got the privilege to be able to pursue my ideas and try and turn them into reality. And I actually have an idea. And I must say, ideas are not that common. So if you do happen to have something in your head, a vision, you should chase it. You shouldn't take it for granted, and you shouldn't chase somebody else's.
Mm. Did you share that idea when you had it? I mean, you say somewhere that ideas are cheap. Two trains of thought, or I've met two trains of thought from lots of different people, I suppose. There's those that hoard it, they keep it secret. They're so scared someone's going to steal their idea. And then there's the other set that just sit there and would share our idea. There's such a big difference between ideas and execution. Where do you sit?
I'm definitely on the side of the anonymous secrets. The bigger the idea, the less likely you can pull it off by yourself. And the only way you're going to find the people that are going to help you pull it off is if you tell people. And the more people you tell, the more likely somebody's going to come along. You're also going to find out who's going to screw you. So if I tell you the idea and you run off and steal the idea and off you go, then I know I can trust you. Off you go. The best way to find out whether I can trust you is to trust you. But more importantly, the only way you're going to be able to help me in something that I'm trying to achieve is if you know what I'm trying to do. So I'm very open with my ideas. I put them in books. I put them on blogs. I put them in interviews. I tell everybody this whole thing. And I always back myself that I'm the only guy who can make that thing come a reality. Now, the truth is, if I'm not the only guy who can make that thing or girl make that idea become a reality, then the idea probably has no value to me. But at least you're getting the idea out into the world. Somebody is going to turn it into reality. I mean, I've just seen too many people just think the idea is worth something. Ideas are worth nothing. It's only the execution. And the only way you're going to be part of that execution is if you find partners. And the only way you're going to find partners is to tell people your idea.
How much due diligence did you do in terms of the pricing for Fibre Time? So I remember chatting with the founder, Charles Savage, for Easy Equities. It's almost the way he explains it, back of a fag pack. He's on holiday. He's had this epiphany. He's obviously got some great backers there because they've backed him before in his other ventures, and they go for it, and they're just going to go and do their proof of concept and see what turns out. And it's turned out very well. They've got 1.5 million customers, and I think they're actually making profits as well, which is quite nice for a startup. Did you do a lot of due diligence and planning and introspection about the complexity, or was it literally, this is a good idea, we're going to make money, let's just get started, and a few people chipped in to get you off to the races there?
Firstly, I love Charles Savage and Easy Equities. They did a great thing, and I like the way they built that business. They were one of the first supporters for what we did. Secondly, I would say we go with the latter. We said, people have got £5 in their pocket. Let's sell £5 a day internet. Let's make it work. I've got some money. And we've tried to make it work since then.
So let's get into that then. So you've got the idea. You're starting to go and ask people for money to go and invest into this. You've obviously at some point worked out that you can't lay fiber. Was that always at the front and center of your mind, that you're not going to be able to put it underground, and you're going to have to hang it for, in a kind of way that the telephone lines used to be, or was it something you found along the journey?
No, always there. Effectively, we're a low-cost internet producer. That's what we are. The only way you can sell internet that is so damn cheap, it's 85% cheaper than the leafy suburb equivalent, is if you mustn't hurt your quality, but you've got to get as low a cost as you possibly can. So, aerial fibers, a third to 20% of the price of trenched fiber. And the only reason we're really using trenched fiber in our leafy suburbs is because residents complain if they see a pole with fiber on it, and they say it ruins their view. I mean, places like Tokyo, everything's aerial fiber. So the countries in the world with the highest density of fiber penetration only do aerial fiber because they know it's the most affordable, which means you can offer the lowest possible price.
Yeah.
It comes down to that. And the other thing that we hadn't realized in the beginning, which was very applicable in a township, townships are very densely packed. The homes aren't well planned, etc. There's not a lot of space. You can't trench. You have to put a pole. I mean, you've got 32 homes around one pole and Alex. And to get to that hole, to dig that hole is almost impossible. You can't dig a trench to get there. So you have to have a pole, and you have to string the fiber along the top of all the shacks. It's the only way you're going to get the penetration.
So when you were going through this in your mind, and then you started to go and lay your first sets of fiber, how did you solve that, that massive barrier that all companies face about actually getting customers? I mean, this one's critical for you. It's mission critical, because this is prepaid per minute fiber, okay? And they're not signing up on a 2-year contract, like AT&T organized with Apple, so you can afford a super expensive phone and have it financed over 2 or 3 years. You're having to go and convince individuals to go and give you £5 rand with vouchers or some other mechanism regularly, and that's a lot of friction. How did you actually move that forward and get a substantial number of people to go and sign up and start paying you so that you could get the financing to get the capital to lay more fiber and have your virtuous circle? I mean, that's an impossible dream, surely.
Now we had to build them there to come. The first thing is we're not actually asking people to do something they aren't doing already. People are already buying airtime, mobile airtime, and they're spending a lot of money on it. So you know what their spend is already per month. So we knew we were going for something that was already being sold. We were just offering much greater value. Just to give you context, our biggest customer, September last year, used 1.6 terabits of data that month playing Call of Duty and FIFA. He only used about 85 rands worth of Fibre Time. 85 rand of Fibre Time. If he'd used MTN mobile data out of bundle rates, it would have cost him 1,650 rand. So, it's a pretty big value proposition we're offering there. So we knew that. And secondly, we go into every home, physically into the home, and we knock on the door, and we install fiber on the wall, and we plug it into the electricity. So you actually have an advert in every home. I mean, you're sitting in your home, you're looking at this router on the wall, you're going, oh, I wonder what that router is about. Well, it says Fibre Time. Maybe I could buy a Fibre Time voucher. But for the rest of it, we've been pretty mediocre. I mean, marketing and activation, I'd say we're 1 out of 10. I mean, we're getting pretty good at the build, but the marketing side of it is not as easy as it sounds. To train people, to explain people how it works, to explain the benefits, to explain people they can trust it. There's no catches, there's no hidden bills, your data's not going to go missing. That kind of process was slow to figure out. But luckily, just with the initial kind of mediocre effort we've made, we already had, the networks are very profitable. So the more vouchers we sell, the more money we make.
Yeah, I get the feeling you're at a stage now where it's becoming a lot easier to get capital and interest because you've got evidence. You can prove that what you're doing is working well. Do you also feel that you've got a strong moat, or are you now starting to get worried that this is a model where others can copy relatively easy?
No. I mean, we're not sitting on our laurels. We've got lots of very impressive competition. Guys like Vumatel, they've got lots and lots of money. So, for whatever reason, they're not offering what we're offering in the communities. I'm not sure why they don't. And maybe over time, it's proven that our model is not the right model. Other people's have the right model. But we're married to our model. We're gonna, as the Afrikaner says, fork foot on 5 rand a day, 100 megs per second internet. We've got some little tweaks around it, which is difficult for other guys to copy. But for now, it's really just about going as fast as we possibly can. But we haven't made a secret of what we do. I mean, I've written a book about it. I've told everybody for 4 years what we do. We'd actually like more fiber companies to be doing this because our mission is not for us to connect every home in the country. It's so that every home in the country gets connected. And the more companies that are adopting our model, the more likely it is these homes are going to get connected. But at the end of the day, it's about capital. If you don't have access to capital, you're not going to achieve this thing. And I think we're very lucky in the sense that we've got access to quite a lot of capital. We've got about 415,000 homes connected already. That's about just over 2 billion rand deployed. And we've got another 600,000 homes for the next 12 months. We're talking about 5 or 6 billion rand just to get out of bed. And not a lot of companies have got access to that.
At some point, you came up with the idea to go and mimic the REIT model. Can you tell us how you came up with that idea and how you got that one rolling? Because, and actually just for everyone on the call, what a REIT model is.
A REIT model is a real estate investment trust. Basically, you build a shopping center, you sell the shopping center to the fund, and then you rent the shopping center back. And then the fund gets a minimum yield, so it's say 15 or 10% yield, and then if anything over that, you can keep for yourself. So it's a way of getting like off balance sheet financing. Traditional fiber companies put all the financing on their own balance sheet, the debt and the equity, and I've done that historically with Heritel. But I just thought, you constantly in the stop, start, because you got to raise more money, you got to do evaluation, you got to do this, you got to do that. Wouldn't it be great if we could just, as we build, just sell into a fund and rent it back? So it's a sale and leaseback rather than on balance sheet funding. It's not that complicated. And a lot of people have been thinking about it for a while, but we got very lucky with our partners. We had Java Capital help us put it all together. We had Fairvest come on board as our anchor, and we managed to get it going. And it's kind of proven to be a nice little model. I mean, it's a very, very efficient and fast way to fund a pipeline. So as we build, we sell in, and we just recycle the capital.
Were you surprised at how quickly people, when you were able to find backers for this? Because, there's obvious differences between fiber and shopping centres. I mean, for a start, shopping centres, lock up their tenants for many years when they take on those rental agreements. And secondly, it's hard to steal a shopping centre. I'd imagine it's easier to cause disruption with your fiber cables.
Thanks for bringing up all those risks. I appreciate that. But there's a reason South Africa has such a strong capital market. It's such a well-developed ecosystem is because it's careful about risk. And I like that. I like the fact that our banks don't get crazy around lending money and the pension funds are careful about where they put their money. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a pension fund industry. So it was a very hard sell because it's not so much the safety of the infrastructure, it's the lack of track record. That's the problem. And how do you create a track record unless they give you the funding, but they're not going to give you the funding unless you've got a track record. So in the beginning, it wasn't easy. We did a lot of sales. But now that we've got a bit of momentum, it's pretty damn obvious that there's something here. And the longer we're around and the longer our networks are looked after and they generate revenue, the more comfortable funders are getting around it. This is a long-term 20-year asset. It's going to generate a nice yield for a very long time. And we offer a nice yield. I mean, it's a very nice yield, a much better yield than a shopping center. So, that's the gist of it. Raising money is not easy. I have a superpower at it. And I've got great partners that have helped us kind of get the stuff right, but it hasn't been easy. And there have been a couple of close calls, but at the moment it seems okay.
Well, we have to, we'll come back to that in a minute. Perhaps 50-50. No, I'll come into that in a bit. I'll keep it as a secret just for myself. But the lessons that you've had over the last 4 years, can you share some of the more extreme, moments, the harder moments that you've had to battle through? You mentioned earlier on this call that there's been times when you thought you were going out of business. Can you share some of these dark moments?
In Fibre Time,
Yeah.
Well, I suppose maybe I can share some of the more distant ones because it's not really at the moment. Maybe the more recent ones I can leave out. But we had a terrible moment just over 2 years ago where two of our co-founders left, and it really disrupted the whole business. It was very emotional for me and for them and for everybody, and scary for shareholders and scary for banks and everything like that. We managed to navigate our way through. They couldn't have done that without the right partners. That's probably the big one. That is in my mind, I don't think it was a true near-death experience, but it did feel like it could have become a real run on the bank. And it was terrible. We had good friends, but it wasn't going well. But how do you manage situations where the people that you need to kind of deliver the goods are very close to you as well? And I mean, I've struggled with that my whole life, and sometimes it's hard to keep friends when you're in business with friends. But for me, in the end of the day, almost everything very simply comes down to, are we going to connect everyone to the internet or not? If this person or this initiative is going to slow us down in terms of connecting everyone to the internet, then they come second to the mission. And there's a very kind way we can go about doing it. We always try the respectful and kind way, but after a while, if we run out of kindness and time, then we just revert to the ruthless way. So always try to do everything respectfully and kindly. I always try to put myself in the other person's shoes and do unto others as I'd have them do unto me. But that was quite a hectic time. We did manage to have a nice breakup, and we looked after them, and they made a bit of money, and it was absolutely no bad vibes, which was great. As far as these things go, it couldn't have gone better. But that was a very stressful time for me personally. I think I actually came close to a nervous breakdown. It was a very stressful time. My mom actually passed away at the same time. And actually quite a few other little judgment areas of mine in that time kind of probably came from that enormous stress I was under.
You've said before, let's unpack this a bit further. You've said excellence trumps loyalty. Can you just explain that and obviously how that relates to that particular circumstance?
Yeah, sometimes I write these things or say these things, and I wonder why I actually said that. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe loyalty does trump excellence. But I do think, if you want to win, and I think business really is about winning. And I've never won anything in my life. I'm a loser. I was not the cleverest guy in class. I was never the fastest. I wanted to win, but I couldn't win anything. So, I mean, I'm speaking from somebody who's not used to winning, but I do say in business, the most important thing is winning and having a winning mindset and aiming for victory, total victory. You actually can't do it unless you have excellent players. It's like a football team or a rugby team. To a certain extent, you can be loyal and you can use chemistry and the culture and all of that stuff. That's maybe the individuals don't have to be. Maybe the individual traits don't really have to be that good. But the truth is, all things being equal, if all 11 players on the pitch are excellent and better than all the 11 players on the other pitch, and you've got all the other things right, like culture and chemistry, etc., you're going to win. So, I mean, it's important to kind of put that thing excellence ahead of loyalty, because for people like me who are ultra loyal and married to this idea of loyalty and looking after people that looked after me in the past, I've got to keep reminding myself that you've got to put the best person in the job. Always have the best person in the job.
And then if you go above that and think about mission and versus profit, or purpose versus profit, how do you weigh up those two often competing forces? You want excellence. A way to go and get that is to drive them around purpose. Purpose is a motive. It's always a great way to go and get people to go and do things which are beyond, the norm, I think, certainly on a sustained basis. So I've got huge admiration for purposeful organizations. I genuinely believe purpose is kind of a key North Star for the greatest organizations, but you've still got to focus on profit. If you can have all the purpose in the world and you're not going to be able to pay the bills, it's completely irrelevant. How do you balance those two uncomfortable bedfellows?
You just need a bit of horsepower. Anyone can change the world and lose money. it's hard to make the world a better place and make money at the same time. And that's where horsepower comes in. Horsepower being IQ. You need some brains. And it's helpful if you've got people around you who've got more brains than you do, just to kind of get to that end result. And for us, it's quite simple. We want to connect every home in South Africa. That's almost 20 million homes. And that's going to take, for argument's sake, say 100 billion rand. You're not going to get 100 billion rand from charity. You're only going to get 100 billion rand from people who want to make more money. And the only way you're going to give people more money, if you give me 100 billion, I'm going to have to give you back 200 billion. To do that, I'm going to need to make a lot of profit. So that profit motive, just drive. The profit is there so that we can access more capital, so that we can connect more homes, which is the ultimate purpose of getting people on the internet. So
how do you weigh that up then? Because you've got a purpose to try to connect all homes across the globe. In theory, that means make it as cheap as possible. Yes. Then you've got another set of stakeholders and investors that are saying, no, I don't want it as cheap as possible. I want the maximum margin, and we're willing to go and help you to scale, but the profits need to be there. How do you go and price something like what you do, to come up with your R5, I suppose, per minute?
Well, you've got to sell the dream. You've got to explain to people that over time, that R5 a day is going to be world-class. World-class profit margins. It only works at scale, obviously. If we only had 100,000 connected homes, it would never work. So you have to sell it's a bit like Amazon did. You've got to sell this big dream to investors so that they understand the big picture. But it's impossible to make a horse climb a tree. It's impossible to make a horse climb a tree. So if you've got the wrong investors, you're going to waste your time with that whole story. And
Did you get pressure from them? Did they ask you to make it 10 rand a day?
Never. No, because I've had some bad experiences with shareholders in the past, and I'm very careful now about who I bring onto my cap table. And we brought people into Fibre Time, including the banks, by the way. We weren't shareholders, but RMB, for instance, is our financial backer, unbelievable bank to work with. All of them came on, understanding this bigger picture and our strategic rationale. So you're not having this every 3 months argument about why don't you push up the price? In fact, we have an argument, why don't we bring down the price? Because once we get to economies of scale, we can reduce the retail price, we can keep our profit margins, we can make it cheaper, get more people on the internet. So you have to have some strategic logic, you have to have some ability to sell the dream, but most importantly, you need the right partners.
All right. Much as I love hogging the questioning, we've got 3 coming in. I better turn to them as I promised. I'll start with Joseph's. Great job that you're doing. In Kenya, we also use aerial fiber. Was vandalism an issue when connecting in the townships? I guess he's suggesting it was for him.
No, there's no vandalism. They have no problem. But there are mafias. So, when you go into a township in South Africa, you have to deal with a construction mafia and a protection racket and all that stuff. Effectively, you ask the municipality for way leave, but from then on, you're dealing with local authorities. And you ask the ward councillor who's in charge, and then you go meet the gang leader, and they arrive at AK-47s, and you sit there and you show them the job card, and this is what we're going to pay, and you negotiate local labor, and you pay a security fee, and it's all contracted. There's nothing informal about it. It's actually very formal. But you are dealing with local kind of protection rackets, effectively. And if you don't, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Some of the fiber companies haven't gone down that community road, and they've paid a big price for that. We're very careful about including the whole community. We're also knocking in every door. So by the time we install, everybody knows what we're doing. They know the value. And then you must get that network live as quickly as you can. You go build it, you make it live, and once it's live, people are using it. And we've been very lucky. We've had no problems with vandalism or theft or anything like that.
As a white privileged guy living in Stellies, how difficult was it for you on those first trips into the townships? Was that an experience that was scary? Talk me through that, and then how you actually go and manage that with your team. I guess there's lots of other people coming in who are going to find this a very new sort of environment to operate in.
You've got to overcome your fears. It's like your first public speaking. And I wouldn't say I was afraid to go into a township, but I'm a bit uncomfortable. I didn't grow up in a township, and I don't speak Zulu or Khoiso, for instance, fluently. So we kind of figured it out. We on the ground. We started in a township which is relatively safe, Kayamandi here in Stellenbosch. There are some townships like KwaZakele or Zwide or parts of Khayelitsha that are radically dangerous. We've learned now. Okay, now you just got to be a little bit careful about where you go. Obviously, for the most part, townships for white people at least are quite safe. It's quite a controversial thing to say, but I think as a white guy in a township, I'm safer than I am as a black guy in a township. So. But that said, you've got to be very careful, that once they've kind of, a gang or somebody has picked you up, they don't come and can kidnap you or something like that. We've got lots of safety protocols. We figured out all of that stuff. But for the most part now, I feel pretty comfortable when we're operating in the township. And I love the community, and I love the warmth of everybody. If you're operating in Newlands, you can't knock on somebody's door and say, "Can I show somebody your router?" I'd like to show off, the internet because you won't be able to get to the door. And you get in a corrugated iron shack in Kaimandi or in Alex, you can knock on the door and say, hello, sir, please can I show these visitors the Fibre Time? And then they'll let you into their home and you have a chat and they explain what it means to them. And it's wonderful. I love it. It's much, much, much more meaningful than working in Sandton.
David's question here: have you got ideas around how you can support rural communities?
Yeah, lots. The main thing is transmission. So how do you get to the internet? If you've got lots of fiber passing the major cities, but in Zululand, for instance, how do you get transmission? We've actually been talking to Starlink a little bit about something like that. We're trying to find ways of getting to the internet that don't rely on terrestrial. So until we solve for that problem, the rural villages, etc., are going to be quite difficult. Sometimes also the rural townships are a bit subscale, so we have to figure out a way to subsidize that. So lots of plans there, but the truth is the vast majority of South Africans are living in the metro townships. And so like say 70% of the homes and the people, and that's our priority. We're at 420,000, 415,000 connected homes. We're the biggest township fiber company in the country. We're at 415,000 homes and there's 17 million freaking homes. So we are at such a small market percentage that we've got to go for the low hanging fruit first, which is the cities.
Interesting. What's this next question? You're extremely open. I love this one, and you clearly value the truth. Where does this come from? I mean, reading the book, just to double down on that, you are extremely open. Where does that come from?
Oh, thank you. I try to be.
Have you always been like that, by the way?
I've been pretty frank. Yeah, I'm sometimes a little bit too much. So I need to learn more diplomacy. And maybe sometimes I've almost been disrespectful when I speak to people. So I just try to be a little bit more diplomatic. But the point is, I want you to get to the point. So when we're talking, I want you to get to the point. So we just get to the point, and therefore I'd like you to also feel that I'm getting to the point. That's quite important. I wouldn't say I've always been the most honest person in the world. When I was a kid, I used to lie to my dad when he'd say, "Did you push your brother out of the treehouse?" I said, "No, of course not, Dad. That wasn't me." Or, "Did you feed your brother Handy Andy?" I fed him Handy Andy, but there was no ways I was going to tell my dad because he would have killed me. So, yeah, I think they're just some examples of times in my life where I realized I could talk my way out of trouble. And then I realized one day I have to tell the truth all the time. I have to be radically honest. I can't lie about anything, like anything. Did you close the gate last night? I mustn't lie to my wife. Even if she'll never find out that I didn't, I must tell her, no, I didn't, and I must wear it. Just tell the truth on every single little thing, because it's honest, the truth is really the most important thing. Just being straight with yourself and other people. And it kind of helps. It helps build trust. It certainly helps in a township. You're operating in a township environment where people have been screwed and lied to for their whole lives. So to go in there with any kind of mealy mouth stuff or lies or over promises, you're going to end up in a lot of trouble. So that kind of mindset goes into our business as well.
Where do you get your inspiration from that to back it up? Because that's sometimes a very difficult line. Being truthful is not easy. Being honest and open to people is not, I agree. I think one of the best things that you can have as an entrepreneur and you're sharing an idea with someone is they look at you and go, that's the crappiest idea I've ever heard. People, or if you're in an office environment and you're doing something and you're looking for feedback, the guy says, no, this is absolutely awful. Whatever you're doing there is just wrong. You're just doing it in the wrong way. You're pissing people off. You need to understand more about the impact you're having. Those types of conversations, I've always found the best conversations because they're the ones you learn from if you can take it and you grow from and you change or at least you're aware of it. But the number of people who are able to have those conversations seems alarmingly few. You've got this in spades, but do you find it difficult?
No, I actually don't like getting negative feedback. I really don't like it. If you're going to give me negative feedback, please just be nice and gentle about it. Just be kind.
Yeah.
Just don't hit me too hard. But that said, I do want the feedback so I can get better. And I've realized, also culturally, blacks and whites in South Africa are different around this type of thing. So you've got to approach a conversation with a fiber splicer in Alexandra differently from how I approach the conversation with a German software developer here in Stellenbosch. Culturally, it's just different about how people kind of engage with those types of conversations. Yeah, you just got to. It's no good saying I told the truth. It's about the message you get across. And it's not the same medium every time. It's not the same way of delivery. So it's like me speaking to you in French and telling you something in French. It doesn't matter that I told you that truth in French if you didn't understand it. And sometimes the manner of communicating what you're trying to say is like French. But the other person can't absorb the information because they're feeling disrespected or they're not hearing it in the right words or whatever it is. So, it's one of my big challenges in life is how to deliver a message and get through to the other person. So couch it in such a way that the other person's guards don't go up and they just block out whatever I'm trying to get across, you know. And also, of course, it's just my opinion. I mean, there are some factual truths, but a lot of what we think is the truth is just my opinion. So I always want to couch, and including everything I'm saying here, it's just my opinion. It's from my lived experience. You know, I mean, I might be wrong, and I've got lots of things still left to learn in my life.
Are you planning to grow Fibre Time to the rest of South Africa? I think I can answer that for you. I think that would be your minimum requirement. I think you kind of inferred that earlier. Where do you want to take Fibre Time? Do you want to take it global?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I did a road trip through Latin America last year, all the way from Mexico, Colombia, Paraguay, Brazil, Argentina. There are lots of slums. There are lots of slums in Latin America. There are lots of slums in Philippines. There are lots of slums in Indonesia. There are lots of slums in Bangladesh. Lots of slums in the rest of Africa. Why not? We've got a solution for slums. Internet and slums, affordable internet and slums. There's never going to be a better technology than fiber for that type of connection from a congestion perspective. And I think we figured out the pay-as-you-go model, which it's pretty damn obvious that most people in the world will be paying as they go for fiber, even in the leafy suburbs. So why would we stop our ambitions here in South Africa, you know? But that said, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. You know, it's a bit dreamy to talk about that stuff. We've got to get SA rock solid before we try anything outside of South Africa.
Do you believe that fiber should become, free effectively? It should become an asset which governments enforce in the same way they focus on roads and water and other infrastructure, and they should provide it to their populations for free?
It's technology. I mean, it's nice to say things like that. And we tried to work, when I was at Project Isizwe, we tried to work with municipalities to provide Wi-Fi for free. But the government itself can't manage that type of infrastructure. You know, a road doesn't change, pipes don't change for water, but the technology changes all the time. And whether the fiber stays the same, but the endpoints are different, you know. So I'd start by saying it's not something the government should do. It's also not something the government needs to do, because it's not that much infrastructure. You know, the cost. I mean, if you think of how much Eskom is planning to spend on transmission in the next 10 years, it dwarfs what the total cost for fibering every home in South Africa is. So the capex for fiber and telecoms in South Africa is not going to be that big. And I think we've got a profitable model. But I do think, and I don't think there's any should in anything. Should it be free? Should it be? There's no such thing as a should or entitlement or a deserved. It's just a question of, can it be? I do think fiber internet can be free, but you need to figure out other ways to make money so that your profit margin you were getting from selling vouchers is substituted with something else.
When you were rolling this out, the unfortunate thing for you was this was really at a time when South Africa was at its most volatile, when we were having load shedding. And you made the decision, I don't know if it was a unilateral decision, that as you're watching the fiber usage go down to zero when we've got stage 8 load shedding because people don't have power, you just decided we're going to go and add solar and batteries to these devices that we're putting in people's houses, to their routers, to solve that particular problem. What was the reason that you came up with that idea? And was that difficult again to get your investors to support it? Because clearly that was a big capital outlay and you didn't change your pricing.
Yeah, I did. No, we didn't do solar. We did UPSs after stage 6 load shedding.
Okay, UPS. Okay.
Just as we went live, we hit this thing and wiped out our revenue. So, you know, we either go to debit orders, so we don't worry about losing vouchers. Okay, well, that's not going to work in the township, so that's dead. Or we solve for electricity. We can't fix Eskom, so you got to solve for electricity. So it was like a no-brainer. And we'd already spent so much money to get the network up and running in Kaimandi. Well, you know, either walk away from the network or you put a bit more money into it. So you kind of find yourself half pregnant and you've got to keep going. But we'd always said Kaimandi was a proof of concept. And we learned so many lessons in that network, like things, how to do things, type of infrastructure we need, Faraday cages, things like that. And one of them was UPSs. And then we just did it. It was hard. Nobody wanted to do it. It's something else that can be stolen, but we had to do it, so we did it. And now, whenever there's load shedding, our revenue goes through the roof because there's nothing else to do other than Fibre Time. There's no DSTV. You know, so it actually turned out to be great for our revenues as well.
Mm. Do you see yourself as more than just an ISP, though? Because it's a great question extending on Richard's question here. TikTok, for example. I mean, we can pick on TikTok. I can pick on Instagram. So much of the stuff that's on the internet is complete slop. That's probably the best case scenario. The stuff I really worry about is the stuff that encourages people to do the wrong thing. It influences their mindset. It leads to people being depressed, spending too much time at home, forgetting how to go and have a cultural relationship with real people in the real world. They fantasize because they see imagery on Instagram which just doesn't exist, and it depresses them, and then they end up becoming suicidal. The evidence of the downside of free access to the internet is mounting on a daily basis. Do you see yourself as having to play a part in somehow monitoring that, or encouraging people to look at the good stuff? Or are you just an ISP?
Oh, I wish we were advanced enough to be able to do anything about that. But we're so busy trying to bloody dig holes and plant poles that it's impossible for us to think of anything other than that. Maybe one day we'll get to a point where we think about that. But um, I just think there are more benefits than all things being equal. There's just more benefits than disadvantages. And sometimes we just forget what it was like not to have uncapped internet. So now you're totally accustomed to unlimited home internet, and all you're focusing on is the fact your kid is on TikTok all the time, or kids are playing Call of Duty and shooting people and stuff. So you're not thinking about all the other stuff that was what life was like before you had the internet. You couldn't email your CV, you couldn't do your homework online, you couldn't do anything other than drugs, alcohol, and gangs because there was nothing to do. Before you get internet, there's no entertainment. So if you've got a nice big garden in your leafy suburb, okay, you go play cricket or soccer outside. But if you're living in a township, outside is not a safe place to be. And interestingly enough, one of the first pieces of feedback we got from our customers was from my mother. She thanked us. She was crying when she thanked us because she said for the first time, her children don't go outside anymore. They're on their devices the whole time. That's the opposite of what my wife says. But for her, outside is not a safe place to be, especially if she's not at home. She wants to know the kids are inside and safe. But that said, all of that, I don't absolve our responsibility for, kind of realizing what is being enabled, like sports betting, for instance.
Another
But
good
we're
one.
not at a point yet in our business to think about how do we manage that stuff. We're just at a point of just panicking and trying to get on top of the bull program.
Where do you think the biggest lessons that you've had that have created the person you are today? Because you've had so many ups and downs, and just for the audience to give some context, I mean, CellFind, this was a success story, although you sold out early and it became even more successful after you departed. So you must have some
If it's not a big
ruminations
business.
about whether you did that. But you were super young, and then you get offered to go in and become the CEO of a very big company, iBurst, hundreds of staff, massive infrastructure. That must have been a huge leap. But the point is, at that point, you've been successful. Then you go into MXit, and that doesn't turn out quite so well. You get succumbed by WhatsApp and have to start dusting yourself down to try to pick up the pieces again. So you've had such a roller coaster life. What are the kind of moments for you where you really think you've had transformational kind of thoughts which have reset your mindset or your focus or how you approach business?
I've had lots of lessons along the way. I've taken lots of notes. I reflect a lot. I've written books about it. But the pivotal moment in my life was MXit. So MXit, we bought MXit in 2011. Sorry, 2012. Let me just think about it. 2011, October 2011, and I got kicked out a year
Can you
later.
just tell everyone what MXit is in case they don't? I mean, I'm English. I didn't know what it was until I was researching this.
Yeah. Look, if you're in your 40s or 50s and you're a pedophile, then you'll probably know what MXit is. If you're under the age of 40, then you'll know what MXit is. And if you're under the age of 25, you probably don't know what MXit is. But it was a massive social network, instant messaging platform. Basically, that you send free SMSs between each other for feature phones, for old Nokia phones and Siemens and all that stuff. And also let you meet people in chat rooms. And so a lot of people were using for dating. I mean, I would say it was Tinder for the Cape Flats. Um, and we bought it, and it was great, very successful, successful, definitely one of the biggest tech success stories that's ever come out of South Africa and possibly out of Africa. The shareholders had some problems, and I just swooped in and grabbed this business, bought it, raised a bit of money, and we bought it in 2011. We knew that WhatsApp was coming. We thought we could compete with WhatsApp. I messed up the strategy. I messed up the smartphone experience. I messed up the business model. I mean, I was grossly incompetent, unconsciously incompetent, like the worst of all things. And effectively, obviously, lost the confidence of my partners, and I got kicked out. So that is 2012, and that was quite a hectic thing. It was socially quite a hectic thing because Stellenbosch is a small town. If you get divorced out, you're still brother and sister. It was for my ego, it was a very bad thing. I mean, I obviously had a very big ego. If you didn't know how good I was, you could just ask me and I'd tell you. I got smacked down properly, and my self-esteem was affected, and I lost a lot of money, a lot of money. So I ended up having to sell my house. And I told my wife, good news and bad news. We're going to go and build a nice new house. The bad news is we're going to rent this house, and we ended up renting a little cottage for 8 years. And a whole lot of stuff happened there. It was a very big reset moment for me personally. Very lucky to have managed to recover since then. But I did take away a couple of big lessons, three big lessons. One was under promise and over deliver. So a lot of business is built around trust. No one will trust you if you don't keep your promises. You can't keep your promises if you overpromise. You should always be under-promising. So if I say I'm going to be there at one, if I think I'm going to be there at one, I'll say I'll be there at 1:15. If I think I'm going to make R1 billion, I'm going to say I'm going to make you 700 million rand. I just try to give myself some wriggle room. So, because otherwise you overpromise a little bit, and then you deliver something which in absolute terms is amazing, but it's less than what you said, and people lose trust and things move slower. The second thing is to be frugal. I definitely had some very bad spending habits, not just in my personal life, in business. This kind of mindset that the mobile operators, kind of adopted. There was just so much profit margin. They just spent money like there was no tomorrow. And because my dad raised me and I was sitting around the dinner table and I'd watched all of this stuff, I thought that's how you build a telco. And I realized the hard way that a business needs to, have to keep a frugal mindset. It doesn't mean compromising on quality. You just mustn't spend money like there's no tomorrow. So lots of little lessons. You can read my book about it if you like, but those are my little lessons. And then I try to apply those lessons. I obviously successfully applied them because Project Isizwe was my next venture. That was a non-profit. And then once I got a little bit of courage to raise capital again, then I got Heratel off the ground, even though I was known as a weapon of mass financial destruction. I managed to get that off the ground, and then the first investors in there made a hell of a lot of money. So then, after we sold Heratel in 2022, then I could start Fibre Time, and I could raise money quite easily because by then I had a reputation for making people money again. But I just kept applying all these lessons. And I learned a lot of lessons in Heratel as well. I mean, a lot of lessons, so infinite lessons. But the big ones were under promise, over deliver, and be frugal. And maybe to focus. Focus is a big one. I mean, maybe that's the most important one. Is most people who are entrepreneurial have a bit of ADD issue. I've got to, I'm doing lots of things all the time. The hard part is not saying yes. The hard part is saying no. So I say no to everything. Anybody who asks me for money, anybody who wants me to help them with their business, anyone who wants me to be the director of their business, I'm not interested. I only do one thing. I do Fibre Time, and there's nothing else I do other than projects that are in Fibre Time. So we're doing a security project for townships, but that's within Fibre Time. So focus, concentrate all your energies on one single thing. That is very important. That's helped me a lot.
I must have caught you at a good time when I asked you for this interview then, so I'm going to tick myself on my own private ledger there of success stories. Thanks for that. How do you go and control your ego and that arrogance? It's something I've struggled with through the whole of my career as I try to focus on doing things. It's, look at this guy, he looks a bit German, he's not very friendly towards us, he's quite arrogant. It's something which I've had to deal with and think about a lot. How do you go and deal with ego and arrogance? Because when you are starting to have success and becoming more exuberant, sometimes it's so easy to step across the line and not realize what you're doing. Where are your checks and balances on that?
Well, in retrospect, I mean, you can read a lot of books. Arrogance is a function of insecurity. So when somebody's arrogant, they're actually just feeling very insecure. And I think the reason I was very arrogant when I was very young was because I felt very insecure. And I felt insecure because I thought, I'd only really made it because of who my dad was, and I thought other people thought that as well, which was probably true. They both thought it, and I probably was only successful because of who my dad was. And so then you start feeling insecure, and then you start being cocky and showing off and arrogant and stuff like that. So the way you get through that is deliver the goods. So if you know that you can do it, if you know that you are the real deal, then that insecurity goes away. And then you by definition will be less arrogant, but you'll just be more confident, but less arrogant. But the only way to do that is to deliver the goods. You can't read that in a book. You've got to make a success of your business. And I think you've got to do it twice, because the first time you might just think in your head it was lucky, and that's imposter syndrome. And the second time it wasn't just luck. The second thing is stay close to your friends. My old friends, I stay very close to all my old friends, and they keep me humble all the time. And then, of course, most importantly, marry the right person. If you marry the right person, my wife's life's mission is to keep me humble. So, she's constantly keeping me in check, and that's quite helpful, because if I didn't have that, then I would, then the kind of temptations to the dark side would be there. Yeah.
Yeah. So after MXit, you're down on your knees, you're down in the dirt. Stellenbosch is a very small place, a tightly coupled place, you could say. Your name's not great at that point, I'd imagine. That would be enough for many people just to throw in the towel and leave, or go and get a corporate job, or worse, we won't even think about the worse. How did you pick yourself up, and who did you turn to help pick you up? Because that must have been incredibly difficult.
I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been married. So to the right person. We had a good relationship that wasn't on rocky ground. I think if you go through something like that and you're in a bad shape in your relationship, then it wouldn't have gone well for me. Luckily, my wife and I were in a good place, and that was good. Second thing is we went to the States. I did go to the States, and I did consider moving there, but I just reminded myself, I don't want to live in this country. Not my people, too much competition, no purpose, not my thing. So I wanted to come back to South Africa. I wanted to make a difference in South Africa. It's a place where I'm happy, and there are problems how to solve that make a difference in people's lives. And yeah,
How important were some of your business connections that were able to speak hard truths to you?
I had a lot of mentors who kind of gave me some hard truths, but a lot of I didn't actually need hard truths. I had already had a hard truth. I
Mm.
needed someone to pick me up. I remember Brent Pretorius, one of my mentors, absolutely wonderful human being. He took me for a coffee once and he said, "Look, Al, don't lose your cheesiness." He was like, you could check this, yeah, this light was being broken a bit,
Mm.
and he said, just don't let it break you. Carry on being who you are. Be a cheeseball because it's fucking who you are. Sorry for the swear word.
No,
And wonderful, so he made a big difference. I had a few like older mentors, and obviously my dad as well, and my mom. I mean, thank goodness moms just love their children no matter what. And they got me through the whole damn thing. And then you get the confidence, you get your mojo back, and off you go to the races. I did also consider going into corporate. My wife was saying maybe we need like a steady paycheck, and I was kind of very quietly, subtly made dropping hints that I'd be open for a chief innovation officer, something like that. But no one was going to bite. No one is going to buy it. I think most people start their own business because they don't have a choice. I mean, I needed to make money. I have a wife. I've got kids. I wanted to keep them under a nice roof. I wanted, them to go to a good school. I needed to make money, and I couldn't get a job, and that's why I got another venture off the ground.
you needed to make money. You've downsized your house, so things are not looking good. You're stressed, obviously. So you decide to do Project Isizwe. I mean, that's just crazy. Project Isizwe, an NGO, it's probably not going to work. You're dealing with governments, and municipalities. You should have been out there, beating the streets looking for advisory work, being a consultant if you didn't want to go and work for one of these big companies. That's what many people would have done.
I don't think anybody would hire me as a consultant. So I didn't have options. And I only had this idea of getting internet into townships, and I didn't know how to make money doing that. But I thought maybe municipalities would kind of work with us as a non-profit to like treat the internet like they treat water, electricity as a basic utility. And I shopped around and I went to a couple of municipalities, ended up in Tshwane municipality, and then a whole sequence of miraculous events from the funding to the payments to the contracting, a whole lot of miraculous events. I mean, I feel like there was divine intervention there because it kind of did get me back on my feet from a confidence perspective. And we did
Mm.
make massive difference in people's lives. It was a big, big success. Um, I won't do it again. Working with government is very, very stressful in many ways, and we didn't scale it. So the fact that it worked in Tshwane, more municipalities should have copied it, but we had no success. Either the leaders didn't think internet was important, or they were corrupt, or they were incompetent. So, to find someone who buys the dream and is competent and not corrupt was a pretty rare event, it turns out, in politics in South Africa. So, that was it. And then, but because I was in Project Isizwe and we were doing the Tshwane Free Wi-Fi project, I became aware of the wireless internet service provider industry. And then I realized there's an opportunity to roll them up and create like a national alternative to Telkom. And that's what Heratel was. We were going to buy up all the rural WISPs, create a national alternative to Telkom, maybe move it into fiber and take it from there. And then I had a fight with one of my partners. I wanted to go into townships. He didn't want to go into townships. We fired him. And but by then, the disagreements among shareholders and timelines and objectives and what people wanted to do were too big. So we ended up having to sell.
I love the story. I also see it from a different perspective. I kind of put it in the give to get story. And I find that so many successful business leaders and entrepreneurs have succeeded because they've done things which they didn't have to do. They weren't necessarily for profit. They've put them in situations where they're effectively helping other people. And through that, they've learned, they've built new networks, they've got immense sets of pride in the work that they've done. And that's actually been character building and incredibly positive. Am I reading too much into giving to get to succeeding business?
Oh, I totally get it. I think, and not just business and life. You don't take, you give. It just comes back to you in the end. So I mean, a lot of the good stuff in my life happens when I'm not being greedy. But to not be greedy, to not be worried about your own, what's in it for you, you need to be in a position where you're not worried about your own finances. So, living a big life, having expensive houses and boats and cars and living beyond your means just puts pressure on you. And it's very hard to be generous when you need money in the bank. So it starts with kind of creating an environment, starting with your wife or your husband. Don't marry an expensive spouse. That you don't need a lot of run rate. And the lower your burn rate, the lower your personal overheads, the more risk you can take, the more comfortable you are giving, and the more that's going to come back to you.
Such important advice there. While we're talking about money, and Dile Dube's question, how do you raise money? Like give us the raising money for dummies explanation. What would you put as the forward in your raising money for dummies book? Maybe it is your next book.
No, it's pretty difficult. I mean, I can only speak from my own experience. And remember, I'm a white guy from 1997. My dad started Vodacom. So got quite a few advantages there. But even
Yeah,
me
but you
raising
can
my
sit there. You can sit there after MXit and after that, and just say, no, actually, at that point in your life, it's hard, but you've still succeeded. I'm still going to read the book.
well, the reason I could raise money after Mixit was I hadn't stolen any money. I hadn't been corrupt. I think you don't get second chances if you're dodgy. I was just grossly incompetent, yeah, and
Mm.
and I could own it. I wore it, I knew it. I realized it, and I acknowledged that. And then you go to invest, and you say, you know what, I blew up over here. I paid a big price, but I've got this new idea. And this new idea, I'm going to apply all the lessons I learned from the old business. And these are the lessons I learned, and I'm not going to make the same mistakes. I'm going to make new mistakes. And that person here is somebody who's like reflecting, got some experience, got something under their belt, got a good idea. And they do some reference checks, and the reference checks come back saying, the guy was incompetent, but he wasn't a crook. And then you can get another chance. So, it helps. The more things you're doing, the more track record you've got, the easier it is to raise money. You just got to get going. You've got to somehow get going.
Before this call, you said that we need to allow a little bit of time, which we've only got is a little bit of time, 3 minutes, about social media and public profile. Um, where do you see that? It's changed so radically over the last 20 years. You're someone who has a public profile. You've been successful. You're regularly interviewed. You've written books. You're on the speaker circuit. So many, many people know you or feel like they know you because of your public presence. And obviously, you write a lot on social media. Is this a positive for you? Is it a curse? Is it an industry which is transforming into something else? Give me your thoughts.
I mean, I prefer to be private, and but I chose an industry and a career that doesn't give me that luxury. So if you're going to be a high profile, and I'm by definition high profile because my dad was such a legend and I've got the same name as him, and it's a pretty unusual name. If you're not Craig, who are you? So I had to, you've got to lean into that. You can't run away from that. So I was in a situation where I had to lean into that, and it comes with a lot of benefits. It opens doors, helps you raise capital. There are a lot of things that I benefit from that. But if you're going to do that, you need to control the narrative. You can't have a vacuum out there. You can't let somebody else decide who you are and what you've done. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of people think I'm a dick because they don't know who I am. But the only way I can really get people to know who I am, and I might be a dick to a lot of people, but I might be a good oak as well. And the only way you're going to find out is if I put out there what we're doing, why we're doing it, why we're trying to do it. You can hear from me personally, and you must use different media. I mean, TikTok, my goodness me, TikTok's big. I mean, this LinkedIn is nothing. TikTok, I've got like millions of people who bloody send me messages and react to my stuff and all of that stuff. So, it's different mediums for different audiences, but at the end of the day, you've got to fill the vacuum, otherwise somebody else is going to do it.
Why do you do it though? I mean, you don't need to spend time on TikTok or LinkedIn. You could just quite happily sit there and run Fibre Time, and no one would be. I mean, you might even do it better. You'd have more time to focus on, rather than answering people on TikTok.
Well,
Why
firstly,
do you
I'm
do
not
it?
running Fibertime. I've got a great partner, Dan. He runs Fibertime. I've got a great partner, so I've got a bit of free time. But actually, what happened with that is I started blogging about 15 years ago, writing a daily blog about how to be an entrepreneur, the lessons I'd learned. It was a reflection for myself. And then I realized other people would like to kind of share with some of those lessons. And then I found a lot of young black guys and girls were loving it because, I mean, I just take for granted what I know. And they were following, and I realized, it's not just my own self-reflection. It's actually helping people. People are benefiting from this knowledge or this experience, not knowledge, just like my own mistakes and experience. But then I realized one day, most people are not reading. Most people are watching videos. And if you want to get a wider audience and help more people, then you need to be actually on social media. You need to be on TikTok. The truth is you need to be on TikTok. So I just started experimenting about 6 weeks ago. I started doing these short little TikTok videos and saying, yeah, get married young, keep your overheads low, study chartered accounting, whatever, just as I go along, I wonder what I'd like to hear when I was 20 years old or 20 years five. And then I write them and I do it and off I go. And I hope I'm helping somebody. I'm not sure if there's any benefit down the road, but it's like everything. Like I said at the beginning, if the universe presents you with something new, you should grab it with both hands unless it doesn't comply with your values.
5 years time, I guess. Last question, 30 seconds. Where do you see yourself?
I want to be living in South Africa, that's for sure. Definitely Fibertime. I hope never to sell Fibertime. I think it's going to be a great business. I think it could be the next Capitec in terms of impact and value creation. And I'm really hoping we are somewhere outside of South Africa so we can have another great success story from South Africa.
Are you going to set up a vehicle for people like the guys and girls on this call can invest into Fibertime?
I'd love to list. We want to go on the JSE. Some of my partners say, don't list. Some of my partners say, yeah, it's not a bad idea. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. I'd love to be able to put Fibertime in the JSE, not just for the people on this call, but for people living in townships. I'd love people who are living in townships to have access to companies like mine so that they can get wealthy from the stock market.
there's another set of conversations there about how to go and do that on the private markets. Maybe we'll do that for the next call. I know a lot of people interested in trying to open up access to the private markets, but unfortunately we've run out of time. Alan, thank you very much for making the time, especially against that backdrop of you being the master at saying no to the things that distract you from your focus with ADHD. I feel truly honoured. And to everyone else who's joined, thank you very much. It's great. I think we got through most of the questions, which is rare. So apologies for those that I didn't get to. For the next event, it's going to be financing Africa's 50 billion used car market with the top Ikpe auto check. Totally different conversation based up in Nigeria. Looking forward to that one. I'll share the details on the mailer as always. I hope many of you will join that and bring your questions too. So until then, thank you very much. And Alan, one more time, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys. All the best.
Cheers. Bye-bye.